All right. I think now we are ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if you could please lead us in the roll call for presence and also any disclosures about teleconferencing.
Certainly. Good afternoon, SCTA RCPA Board of Directors. We'll start with Director Janice Cater-Thompson. Present. Director Chris Corsi. Here. Director Ben Ford. Here. Director Gerard Giudice. Here. Director Nisa Hinton. Here. Director Ariel Kelly. Here. Director Sandra Lowe. Here. Director Chris Rogers. Here. Director David Rabbit. Here. Director Mike Wall. Here. Vice Chair Melanie Bagby. Present. And Chair Linda Hopkins.
Present.
And we have all 12 board members are in person.
So exciting. We've got a full house. Wonderful to see everybody today. I'm going to make a quick announcement, which is a change in the order of the agenda, but not the content. We are going to move item 5.2, which is advocacy and legislative update, to the front of the calendar. We will have that after public comment on items not on the regular agenda, but before consent, because actually our director is going to be going to a meeting in Sacramento on the subject, and we want to provide him direction that he can carry forward to that engagement. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and see if there are any public commenters who wish to speak on items not on the regular agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Welcome, Dwayne.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from the Roseland neighborhood of Southwest Santa Rosa. And I want to thank the staff because they've been doing some really good minutes. And it's really a good thing for those folks that aren't able to get the computers to be able to read the minutes. And these are very descriptive, so you can see what actually happened in the meeting. So thank you very much. Please don't hold that against them then and make them just left. So I'm here today to talk about advocacy myself. A couple decades ago, I started going to MTC meetings in Oakland. And I went there because we were discussing how we could have priority development area in the southwest area of Santa Rosa at the same time as a priority conservation area. Because we wanted to save some of the last natural spaces in that area that has basically been targeted for development since 1993 in the southwest area plan that came forward. I have my original copies of those documents, and I've always been a person who believes that if we look back to history, we can advocate better for the future. I see that MTC has come up with an idea that they call the transit-oriented communities policy. And basically, the city of Santa Rosa has used the idea because we have one bus turnaround out in the southwest area at Southwest Community Park, that we're a transit-oriented area. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Not many people really ride the bus. And it's actually better if we would advocate to get a smart station in South Santa Rosa. There's plans ahead to annex an area they call Moreland. And there's plans ahead to put thousands of housing units in the southwest Santa Rosa area, going down all the way towards Todd Road, even further. The idea is if we have a South Santa Rosa smart station, then we can truly be transit oriented. And many of those people who live in that community could take that smart train to commute to jobs down in Marin. It stands right now. If you'll get on the freeway at about 4 in the morning going south, you'll see all kinds of people going down to work in Marin. People with trucks. Most of those drivers are single occupant only vehicles too. So they're not doing carpools even. If you folks are going to do any type of a behavior modification approach, you could do it by having advocacy for a Southwest Santa Rosa smart station. And then have that become the transit hub and really make things work. Right now, it's been more show than go. That bus stop is interesting. I was a part of the Roseland Community-Based Transportation Plan in 2007, and we haven't lived up to the expectations at all. So I know that you folks can do good things for the future. Looking forward to talking with you more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will go ahead and we will jump ahead over to item 5.2, which I will hand over to our Executive Director, James Cameron.
Thank you. So our next item is a legislative update. I'd like to introduce the board to our state legislative consultants from Politico Group, who will take us through a brief presentation. And then I will then following give a presentation on the regional transportation measure enabling legislation and look forward to the discussion. So with that, can we start it off with Chris? Would you introduce yourself? And Kiana.
Okay, I've said it correctly, Chris and Kiana, you should be good now.
But you are on mute.
Yes.
Still on
I'm
mute.
trying to fix.
Okay.
Oh, whoops, wrong button. I'm sorry. There we
Chris,
go.
I was able to unmute myself on my end as well. Got it. Okay.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Chris Lee, I'm a partner with Politico Group. Very proud to be representing Sonoma County Transportation Authority Regional Climate Protection Authority. Sorry we couldn't be there in person today, but we also want to participate in that afternoon meeting that the executive director is attending. So I'm not sure if our slides are up, but wanted to just start off with a really brief overview of our presentation. So that'll be slide 2.
We are just getting your slides up right now.
Item 5.1 or 5.2?
There we go.
5.2.
Thanks.
So just brief outline, and we hope to cover this in about 10 minutes. I think a lot of the information is familiar to you. Our introduction and kind of how we like to approach advocacy with our public sector clients, a little bit of an update on the budget and the ongoing process there, the leadership transition, which is obviously not news to anyone in Sonoma County, and some of the changes in committees that happened as a result of that. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the 2024 legislative themes that we are seeing. And then finally turn it over for a little bit of board discussion and direction from the executive director and to hear about some of the key legislative measures that SCTA RCPA has already weighed in on, as well as some of the big items for discussion. So if we could go to the next slide. So just a little bit about myself, Kiana and I worked together for almost 10 years at the California State Association of Counties, representing counties on transportation issues in addition to housing and land use. Prior to that, I worked for the Yolo County Board of Supervisors and County Administration Office. So we've really spent a lot of our career not only working on the issues that are core to SCTA RCPA's mission, but really working with local and regional agencies. And Kiana, do you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Yes, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Kiana Valentine, partner with Politico Group. I joined the firm just over 5 years ago now. This is my 6th year with Politico Group. Prior to that, as Chris mentioned, I had 13 years in service to California's 58 counties at CSAC, and then a smattering of years in the legislature and in Congress. But as I like to say, I think I was sort of born and raised in local and regional governance issues and have a deep passion for and expertise in, I think, the issues that are of most consequence to your organization. And so want to echo Chris's sentiments that we are very thrilled at the ability to work with you all and come up with strategic ways to advance your legislative agenda. And I think from here, Chris was wanting me to just get into sharing a little bit with you about our approach to legislative advocacy. I also like to think that our approach to legislative advocacy was very much informed by our time advocating on behalf of local governments who don't always have some of the same tools that your private sector counterparts in advocacy have. We, I think, as local and regional governments really have something to offer, and that's a source of trusted, timely, and high quality data and information. And that is what makes you all so valuable to the legislature, governor's office, and executive branch as they try to develop policy at the statewide level. So we always strive to foster really strong relationships, again, with the legislature, governor's office, and executive branch, also with stakeholder groups, CSAC, the League of California Cities, CalCog, Self-Help Counties, all of the natural coalitions, as well as maybe broadening the breadth of that too. We work very closely with the statewide transportation construction industry, including labor organizations, environmental organizations, business community, so on and so forth. And I think, again, to combine those two, the source of trusted, timely, high-quality information helps us foster those really deep and meaningful relationships. Chris and I like to say that we try to provide something to offices at least a few times before we ask for something in return. So we want to have a number of touch points, giving information, offering connections, building relationships before we're going to folks with our own policy asks. We have a lot of experience developing and working within coalitions. Chris and I both spent significant time and played meaningful roles in the development of SB1. I ultimately served on the executive committee on the No on Prop 6 campaign, and so really afforded a lot of opportunity to refine our ability to develop and work within coalitions. And then finally, we found a lot of success in taking our clients' stories, taking the larger body politic and sort of Sacramento and nationally to the extent that it influences what you all are trying to do, and filtering, creating a narrative, a true narrative founded in truth, but telling the story and how your local priorities can ultimately help the state achieve its goals. And that narrative has been really successful, and we've been working with your staff already to develop that, refine it, and get it ready to present before the legislature and governor's office. Chris, anything to add to that before we go to the next slide?
Yeah, we just wanted to give you a little bit of background about us as we begin our representation of you. And so continue now and talk a little bit about the state budget. The next slide, please. So on February 20th, I believe the date was, LAO issued an updated projection for the budget deficit for the coming year. And now it's a $73 billion deficit, which is really a $15 billion increase over what the LAO calculated as the size of budget problem that the governor was solving with his January proposal. If you look out over those 3 fiscal years there, 22, 23 to 24, 25, the LAO's revenue estimates are about $24 billion below the governor's across that window. And so in that most recent update on the deficit, the LAO laid out options for the legislature to consider and identified approximately $16 billion in remaining one-time general fund spending. Next slide, please. So I think this will be pretty familiar to you because I know James covered it in the last meeting, or February meeting. REAP 2.0 is one of the largest cuts in the housing space, a $300 million reversion of a $600 million program. This is something where with a lot of our clients, we're trying to turn this really wonky sounding program name into tangible projects that legislators want to know about and want to see funded, right? And so this is one where I'm not sure where SCTA will fall on the priority list for you all, but really a significant cut there. A $200 million reversion for infill infrastructure, and then across the housing space, $700 million in cuts to various housing programs. We can skip over the next slide because I think it's more important to go to the process part here. And so where are we in the budget process? January 10th, the governor presents his budget. There's a round of subcommittee hearings on that proposal that are really kicking off in earnest this week. That regional early action program hearing will be on Thursday in Senate Budget Committee. And then this will continue until we get the governor's May revision to the budget, May 15th. Given those projections from the LAO, we're expecting a pretty ugly May revision. That's the huge additional amount of funding that's going to be needed to close that budget gap. And so following that May revise, we have a really quick turnaround to adopt a final budget by June 15th. Proposition 25 a few years ago required the legislature to pass the budget by June 15th or else lose their paychecks and per diem. So since then, we've seen the budget passed timely. Part of that, though, is we see a lot of tweaks to the budget later in the summer, changes to the budget bill itself, which is where all the appropriations live, budget bill juniors. I think we got up to like 8 or 9 of those last year. And then lots of trailer bills, policy to implement the fiscal changes, lagging from summer all the way up into like, the final days of session. And so really at the very beginning of the process, I think we're going to have some pretty dire numbers in that May revision, but just wanted to give you an update of where we are on that. Next slide, please. So Kiana was going to cover a little bit about the leadership changes that we've seen and what that means for the Bay Area.
Great. So as Chris alluded to, and what you are already aware of, is that Senator Mike McGuire, who has some roots in history in Sonoma County, was elected and sworn in as President Pro Tem on February 5th. We anticipated some changes, but frankly, not to the degree that we saw due to his leadership turnover. It was a much more congenial transition of power, unlike what we saw in the Assembly last year. That being said, there were significant changes to key policy committees on topics that you all care about. Primarily, Senator Dave Cortese from San Jose is now leading the Senate Transportation Committee chair. Senator Wiener and Senator Skinner did a bit of a switch, with Senator Wiener leaving the Housing Committee, or the chairpersonship of Housing Committee, to lead budget, and then Senator Skinner leaving the chair of Budget Committee to take the helm at Housing Committee. We have another Bay Area representative, Senator Aisha Wahab, taking over Budget Subcommittee number 5 on transportation issues. And then, interestingly enough, the Senate decided to dissolve the governance, finance, and now I'm already forgetting the name of it. It's so old news. Senate Governance and Finance Committee, forgive me, into 2 separate committees: a Senate Local Government Committee that will be chaired by Senator Durazo out of Los Angeles, and then the newly reconstituted Senate Revenue and Taxation Committee, led by Senator Glazer. Appropriations Chair, also now effective as of today, I believe. Senator Portantino is no longer the chair there. Senator Caballero from Merced is leading that committee. And if we go to the next slide, I think even more important than some of the leadership changes are the legislative themes that Chris and I are seeing as we're reviewing legislative proposals and just taking stock of what is being talked about in the legislature and administration right now. The first thing that we wanted to talk with you about was bonds, and this is of very specific interest to you all. A few observations: that with the vote on Proposition 1, the governor championed Behavioral Health Services Act and housing bond proposal. With that being too close to call, it is unclear what that means for the fate of additional bond measures in November 2024. Lots of observations right now as to whether that is too close to call because voters are concerned about the fiscal condition of the state, hesitant for the state to take on more debt. Is that influencing the way they're voting? Or perhaps another observation in lieu of or in combination with is that Prop 1 is a very complicated ballot proposal. I think it was almost 70 pages in length. I know I personally received lots of phone calls from family members saying, can you please explain this to me? What does this do? What are we going to get for this? So those 2 factors could be at play with respect to that, and that therefore could have some influences on future bonds that may be coming. One of the outstanding issues right now that we're trying to understand is what's the bond capacity? Where are the governor and legislative leaders comfortable negotiating overall additional bond capacity that may appear in 2024? I think at one point last year, before we saw revenues drying up, there was conversation about potentially beefing up the bonds, but that conversation has definitely changed. And we are now talking about trying to influence bonds and downscope those in total cost. So more to come on that. Another theme that is a carryover from the last few years is really transportation investments as climate solutions. How do we increase active transportation, transit opportunities, achieve mode shift to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in vehicle miles traveled? Very significant theme in the legislature right now. In the housing space, while dozens of bills are still spot bills in nature, right, non-substantive markers for future amendments, impact fees are going to be another significant topic this year. We have debated this issue in the legislature over the past few years as well, related to capping impact fees, deferring impact fees. A variety of different solutions are potentially on the table, with pros and cons, depending on where you're sitting at the local and regional level and the sorts of infrastructure you're trying to build. Spot bill deadline today in the Assembly, March 20th in the Senate. So Chris and I will do another review of newly amended legislation and may have some more specific information for you in the coming weeks. Next slide, and Chris, I think, is gonna pass it over.
Yeah, so we'll just briefly run through these. Currently, and I believe some of these letters were out before we were officially signed on to represent SCTA RCPA, but have active support positions on Senator Allen's climate bond, SB 867. As Kiana mentioned, I think the topic there is going to be how do we condense what are really robust climate bonds. There's another measure which is similar but not identical to that in the Assembly by Assemblymember Garcia, into an overall cap of what does the legislature and the governor want to put before voters in November. SB 904 by Senator Dodd related to SMART and its future revenue measure. And then AB 817 by Pacheco, which would allow advisory committees to entities subject to the Brown Act to continue to meet virtually and conform those requirements to really make that a functional possibility for those entities. And then finally, we wanted to turn it back over to James, have several significant bills for discussion and direction related to regional transportation funding legislation, and then operations and potential consolidation and coordination of public transit agencies. And so with that, wanted to conclude our presentation there. If there aren't any questions for us, then certainly want to hear from James and the board on those bills for discussion.
Yeah, we'll take, in the interest of time, we'll take sort of questions and discussion at once after James presents.
Great, thank you. So the bills that are listed below, SB 925, Windsor Regional Transportation Measure Enabling Legislation, as well as the WAHAB SB 926, Bay Area Transit Consolidation Plan. Those bills have been recently combined. So if we go to the next slide, the pending legislation that is likely to come out in March 18th, 1 week from today, will combine SB 925 and SB 926 into one bill, SB 1031, authored by Windsor, sponsored by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So I want to take you through a few slides that address preparing for the 2026 Regional Transportation Measure. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see there's the reason for the measure. The reason for the measure is essentially based on Plan Bay Area's funding gap, that is a substantial funding gap falling short of the bold vision for the Bay Area. But additionally, with COVID impacts to our major transit operators and fare box recovery dropping, MTC has developed a transit transformation action plan that to be able to implement that plan to not only sustain existing service, but to improve the rider experience, significant revenue is needed, as well as to avoid the transit fiscal cliff, revolving around some of the main operators in the area, being Muni, BART, and Caltrans. MTC's work on this measure has established some goals and focus areas as shown on the next slide. The primary goal and focus area is to protect and enhance transit service, also to make transit faster, safer, and easier to use, and then enhance mobility and access for all. These have been established and are part of the enabling legislation that's being worked on by MTC. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see MTC has also adopted guiding principles with regard to equitable, climate-friendly, adaptable, and cohesive. Moving on to the next slide. Now we move into the funding buckets that are being recommended. So these funding buckets are very similar to the buckets within Go Sonoma, where we have ones for improving road and improving transit. So leading this measure is to address that transit fiscal cliff and to make sure that we improve that rider experience and improve transit in the Bay Area. So transit transformation would be the largest bucket of all of these. Also, Safe Streets is the next one based on polling in 2023. Safe Streets polled much better than Complete Streets as it was originally branded. Connectivity and climate resilience would be other funding buckets or funding categories with all yet to be established percentages. Now, moving on to the key questions in the next slide, these have not been decided, and we don't have legislation that established them yet, but we expect to get that in the next week that begins the process of moving forward with the enabling legislation. Those are geographic area. So everything all the discussions to date have been around the 9 counties all being involved in this measure, and that's the direction that we're headed. But the legislation will likely require at least a subset of those counties. And so there has been some discussion on 5 Bay Area counties that are all BART counties. The timing of the ballot measure no earlier than November 26. This is because funding stopgaps have been put in place to address that transit fiscal cliff between now and the end of 26. Those funding stopgaps run out in 27. So these revenues need to be available to address that funding cliff that hits in 27. Revenue options. There's been a long list of revenue options that continually gets whittled down. They're anything from sales tax to property tax based on square footage of improvements to payroll tax and vehicle licensing fee taxes are all, or vehicle licensing fee have all been part of the discussion. Those expenditure priorities that we talked about on the previous slide, as well as funding distribution, are all to be determined. So what's next? In the next slide shows we'll get that updated bill language a week from today. It's moving fairly quickly. The MTC Legislative Committee has really only acted on those, spending priorities and goals and the reason for doing this, but you can expect, major topics to be discussed at the April 12th committee meeting with regard to the share to each expenditure category, funding floor for transit, geographic balance, accountability measures, what will the consolidation study look like as those bills come together, the strengthening of MTC's role as a regional network manager that also goes along with those accountability measures. And then we'll also find out when it will be going to the various state legislative committees in April after that bill language is released. Moving on to the last slide in this deck, staff's looking to request discussion and input on what our priorities are, of which the top of the list, staff's recommending return to source, where we want to make sure that, Sonoma County ratepayers or taxpayers are paying for improvements within Sonoma County. This is a transit bill, so transit integration and expansion of our system and services within Sonoma County, like Smart to Cloverdale, connections to Smart, and then in those other funding buckets of the countywide active transportation plan, our Vision Zero implementation, and then the last bullet on there is to avoid ballot fatigue with Smart if they were to be on a ballot as well in 2026. With that, I turn it back to the chair for discussion.
Thank you very much. So I will bring it back to my colleagues, and I think it would be really good to maybe focus first on the updates that James shared, so that then we can send him on his merry way, and then go back if we have any broader questions and conversations about the really rosy state budget that was presented by our consultants. Opening up the floor to anyone who wants to share some perspectives on that. Authorized measure. All right. Walk into those razor blades, David?
Well, I can tell you what I know. I'm the chair of MTC's Regional Network Management, which was operations and shifted over to Regional Network Management in order to work on some of the things that we've been starting up here, but the coordination and collaboration amongst agencies. Well, Hobbs bill, and that's a senator from the Fremont area, was really looking to consolidate 27 agencies into one. Because there's a lot of honestly, a lot of folks in Sacramento are not necessarily happy with the way that transit has been working within the Bay Area and so on and so forth. The Wiener's bill is really to address the fiscal cliff, as James mentioned. And I would even say primarily for SFMTA, Muni, and BART. And so, and it's no coincidence that the minimum of 5 counties are the BART counties, and that you could tell you that the 4 counties not included would be the North Bay counties. That would be something that we would have to decide whether it was valuable or not. The other items that were really added based upon polling, that people are supportive of those matters. I would ask James to talk about the minimum amount needed to really address the fiscal cliff. Editorial comment, I think that one of the provisions should be that we eliminate directly elected BART board members. And that would go a long ways and probably get us some additional friends in Sacramento. There's only 2 left now in the nation, and the Bay Area has both. Denver just did away with their directly elected transportation board, and it's AC Transit and BART. BART, and part of the reasons that we're in the transit fiscal cliff is when ridership was down 40%, BART's was running 40% more runs. Going in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, and I'll say this as a member of the Golden Gate Bridge, that we have constantly been not running empty buses, going in the opposite direction, taking action to actually save that money and prolong going forward. So there's a fiscal cliff, but it's also, it came about for reasons that were somewhat in our control. And so I think it's really about figuring out the minimum dollar amount that would be needed. And I'm not saying that BART is an asset for the entire Bay Area. And it's regionally important, as is SFMTA, as is San Francisco as a hub within the Bay Area. And it's hurting right now and it needs to recover, and it undoubtedly will, but it'll take time. And so there is a dollar amount that's needed to make sure that those agencies continue to flourish. I'll also say that, unlike what happens in the back east, in the northeast, for instance, where the state can come in and really direct a lot more resources, California has never really directed resources to public transit. And that's why we have 27 separate agencies. And that's why everyone has their own taxing mechanism and local control in that regard. And I think now it's being seen as something that needs to be improved upon as we experienced all the downside of what happened through the pandemic and how different agencies dealt with it or not. So there's a lot of background on moving forward on those particular issues, but I think it's really, for me, I'm really waiting to see what the minimum ask will be on the dollar amount for Muni and BART, what's left to make a difference elsewhere, because you can talk about return to source, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. Of course, there's 5 counties where you can distribute the BART share to, but there's not 5 counties to distribute the SFMTA share to. And what's going to happen going forward. The state always had just like last year, always had a minimum local contribution required before any other state monies would come into play. And that's also part of the equation. So fun times ahead, and good conversations. And of course, some of this is, we can advocate all we want, and some of it will be in our control, but a lot of it won't be. Because, obviously the proportional representation will also take place, and we'll have to deal with it accordingly.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? And I'm actually wondering, James, if you could sort of bring that last slide up that had, sort of the recommendations. Chris?
Thanks. I do think that return to source is a important discussion to have here, because as David said, Smart and Muni could suck up everything from all 9 counties and more, I'm sure. Yeah. Not Smart. Let's see that one. Well, we could get to Cloverdale a lot quicker if we could. We could try. BART, Muni. So you know, the question of return to source versus 5 counties instead of 9 is where I'm landing there. Certainly ballot fatigue was smart. Ballot competition was smart, is at the top of my mind as a smart board member. You know, maybe we do something in early 2026 instead of November 26, but it's bumping close there one way or another. And then is there countywide active transportation, but also countywide transit, bus transit isn't on your list, but I'd be interested in talking about that as well as part of this. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Other comments or questions? I really appreciate what you said, Chris, and completely agree that I don't really want to see all of our money locally used to go and bail out Muni and BART and Caltrain. And I think of actually Measure AA for the Bay, which we all received lots of glossy mailers about how it was going to, you know, protect us from sea level rise, and they represent like 55 miles of coastline, and it only is sea level rise that touches the bay. So all the folks who live out on the Sonoma coast, who I think thought that's what they were getting, right, didn't actually get that. And so I do think that just truth in advertising is very important. If we are going to be talking about these improvements, they need to be local improvements in Sonoma County. I also just want to say thank you to Politico Group for the extraordinarily thorough analysis that you presented, and the staff report, which was even more extensive. Holy Lord, there are a lot of bills that you all are tracking, and I'm grateful that you are doing that work. So we will go to members of the public for comment, but does anyone else have anything to kind of add to that list?
Just
That was, yeah, sure.
just a quick question. So you alluded to, and to Supervisor Rabbit's point, some controls and some oversight with regards to the money and how it gets spent, et cetera, et cetera. Do we know what that looks like? Has MTC started to articulate that, or it's just too soon in the game?
No, we don't know what it looks like. There has been discussions on, you know, the amount of the money and minimums for transit, but there has not been a solidified process for how it would be distributed, other than, you know, proposals of some with more flexibility and some with less flexibility.
One other final thought, which is that I think it's really important to closely track what the funding mechanism is. You know, I think that probably after, well, maybe after this November, it's possibility that most of Sonoma County will already be at the cap. I would assume that this legislation would be sort of potentially expanding the cap. I have found that, you know, parcel taxes seem especially unpopular in Sonoma County as of late, where we've got homeowners who are now paying 10x for homeowners insurance than what they were, at least in my neck of the woods, plus also 10x on flood insurance, which is separate. And then one other thing that I wanted to flag was when you're talking about improvements on a property, sometimes that actually includes things like barns. And so if you're sort of taxing a barn at a rate that you would be taxing a residence, and sort of assuming that it's some McMansion on a hill, when in fact it's a little run down 800 square foot home with a 3,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 square foot barn, that could create some really strong rural equity issues in terms of who is paying this parcel tax. And so I hope that we can flag that as a rural concern for this bill as it moves forward. Any other additional direction, Director Bagby?
Yeah, I think Director Rabbit alluded to something that I hadn't really thought about before, and that is the kind of the East Coast approach to public transportation and what we've done. We've got all of this kind of patchwork of different agencies because that's been our only choice. And what that's resulted in is a very strong connection between the people who are being taxed to provide services and their local officials. And I think that that's going to be a fairly big point of concern as we look at consolidation, is just that kind of principle of local control. We all know that our systems aren't perfect, that our headways are inadequate, and our feeder buses to other transit agencies are lacking, but they're ours and we have control over them. And I think that if I were face to face with folks today who and are talking about their placeholder language, that's what I would say are some of the concerns for places like for Sonoma County, is that we may not be perfect, and we know that we need to perform better and give better services to seniors and kids in school and get people out of our cars, but that the taxpayers who have chosen to tax themselves here locally, at least we have control over it. And this could potentially represent a huge change in how that money is collected and directed. And that's probably my number one question, my number one concern. And I know that it's the one my constituents are going to have.
I really appreciate that. Anyone else in terms of direction? All right, why don't we go ahead and open it up to public comment? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in person on this item?
Yes, thank you. My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, and I am a transit user, and I'm very concerned. I'm glad that the lobbyist pointed out that truth was important, and Ms. Hopkins has also pointed out truth in advertising is important. One of the dilemmas that was not mentioned just now is that the citizen and the transit users are not considered stakeholders. I've not seen anybody here in this county go out with a survey to actually see what the transit user approaches and ideas would advocate for. Let's just do a basic thing. Santa Rosa has a transit system. And if you wanted to use the Golden Gate Transit to get down to San Francisco, if you miss by a minute, you're stuck for an hour. So they're not coordinated right now. If I come in from the southwest to try to catch the 101 going to the south to San Francisco, it doesn't match up frequently, even though you try. And then you're stuck for an extra hour in that delightful transit mall, if you've ever been there. And it's one of those things where for this advocacy, for what you're looking forward to try to get people to vote for more taxes, you need to show them that this is a comfortable situation. I myself like the Golden Gate Transit, and I think we should not cannibalize it to help SMART so much. SMART's a good idea in its own way, but by the same token, it's the Golden Gate Transit. It'll get me all the way into San Francisco. One seat, one ticket, all the way there, all the way down to the ferry building if I want to go that far. And you can't get that with SMART. So it's just something that's not really reasonable to myself or others. One of the other things that's really important about this type of activity is if you're going to be going back to the ballot and seeking more taxes, you need to understand people are really concerned. We're already up to 10% basically. That's just, to me, stunning. I'm a person who voted for Proposition 13. I'm still proud of that. I think that it would have worked well if we didn't have such a effort afoot in Sacramento and in other places to undercut the will of the folks. It's always this situation of like, where are we going to get more money, more money, more money? How about looking at it like more efficiency within the systems that already exist to be better at what they do within the budget that they get? It's something that's going to become even more important in the future because we may have a return to a previous administration at the federal level. And those people weren't that, I guess you might say, protective or supportive of transit and the users. If we go back to the federal administration type people who don't want to help locally, we're going to be in a real world of hurt. So please plan for the worst, even if we hope for the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. And with that, I would take it to back to the board. If anyone, oh yes, oh sorry, oh yeah, online, I forget.
Actually have a member of the public online who wants to speak.
Wonderful.
Eris Weaver, I have permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is Eris Weaver, Executive Director of the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. And I just wanted to make the board aware of a particular piece of legislation that we are following very closely, and that is SB 960, authored by Scott Wiener and supported by the California Bicycle Coalition and a number of other bicycle, pedestrian, and traffic safety advocates throughout the state, including my own. A very similar bill was passed in 2019, but Governor Newsom vetoed it, so we're coming back with it again. Basically, this bill would require Caltrans to follow its own Complete Streets guidelines on Caltrans roadways. We all know the dangers and the challenges presented here in the county on those roads that are city streets and state highways at the same time. And statewide, many of those roads are some of the deadliest that have the highest rates of collisions and are particularly scary and dangerous for cyclists and pedestrians and basically anybody who's not in a car. So that is a piece of legislation that we would very much appreciate your support on getting that passed so that we can improve safety for vulnerable users on those roads. Thank you.
I don't see any of the members of the public online wishing to speak, Chair Hopkins.
Thank you very much. So I will bring it back to the board for any final questions or comments. And this is an action item. So I do believe that we want to take an action to sort of accept the report with the included recommendations from our consultants, as well as kind of memorialize the staff direction that was given regarding the revenue measure.
So moved.
All right. Can we actually just do all in favor, say aye? Does that work?
Yep.
Hallelujah. Okay, all in favor. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously.
This is the second. I didn't hear the second.
Janice. Mhm.
Thank you.
And
All right.
drive safely, James.
Drive safe. Yes, thank you.
Go get them.
So we are going to rewind now back to the consent calendar. Are there any members of the board with questions or concerns about the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would see if any members of the public wish to comment on items 4.1 through 4.5.
Yes, Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland.
One moment, Dwayne. I think we want to get you on both mics. There we go.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland. I'm also a bicycle rider and I'm very interested in this idea about automated bicycle and pedestrian counters for the county. Where are you going to put these? I don't see that many bicyclists out there. And it's just a really interesting idea that even a small amount of money to you folks, $27,000 is going to be spent for this. You probably have ideas like Amsterdam or Copenhagen, and we're all going to be out there on our bicycles, and it's just really going to be wonderful. And you've probably seen the pictures of the bridge in Copenhagen, Denmark, where they have the counter and it shows hundreds of thousands of commuters riding their bicycles to get where they're going. That's not going to be happening in Santa Rosa or Sonoma County for the most part. Here in Santa Rosa, it's a big deal to have a bunch of people come together on one Tuesday and call it Taco Tuesday and go for a ride around. That came from an effort decades ago called Food Not Bombs and Critical Mass. And local folks started to ride their bike around at one time to slow down traffic specifically. That's what the effort was to get in the way of traffic with your bicycles and let everybody know you wanted them to get on bikes. So long story short, here in Santa Rosa, which is the biggest city in our county, I think you'll be lucky if you get more than 500 bicycle riders together at one time. All right. You got a bicycle coalition and you got Bikeable Santa Rosa's come together and they're out there pushing at the various places to get that advocacy and stuff. But the numbers belie the effort that goes forward on the part of these nice advocates. I'm glad they're advocating, but we got to have some reality in this. I talk to people that go to the Roseland School District. They don't have their children ride the bikes to the school because they feel it's unsafe. Sebastopol Road is a main thoroughfare, a main artery here in Sonoma County and Santa Rosa for traffic. Bicyclists don't go on that road either, or Dutton Avenue, because it's dangerous. So where are you going to put these counters to make them worthwhile for your efforts? All right. Maybe that's them calling right now to say they're going to go here. All right. Thank you for your time. I can't stay for the rest of your meeting, but I appreciate all your volunteer efforts and all you're doing.
Thank you very much. And Drew, does anyone have their hand raised online?
Yeah, Eris Weaver permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you. I would like to offer a different perspective on bike and pedestrian counters to that offered by Mr. DeWitt. We can't make good policy if we don't have good information. And if we don't have, if we're trying to make decisions about where we should prioritize improvements and safety throughout our cities, we need data. For example, we for quite some time pushed for SMART to do some bike and pedestrian counts on the SMART pathway, which they since have done and learned that as many people use the pathway as do the train. And no one, I was actually surprised that it was that high. When people make comments about, oh, well, nobody rides their bike on this street or nobody rides their bike on that street, they're talking about what they see at the few minutes that they personally are in that location. I don't even know how many people use a particular route that I ride on every day because I only see who I see in near where I'm riding. So having that technology to be able to strategically use those counters at different places to see, okay, let's do counts before we make a change. And then after we make the change, we do the counters again and see how it changed. I'm really looking forward to see what will change in usage of the SMART pathway when some of the gaps are closed, for example. So we are very much in support of having that technology available to the cities, and heck, I'd enjoy borrowing it once in a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Hopkins, I don't see any other members of the public wishing to speak.
Great. And thank you so much, Eris. And I would actually add that oftentimes the people who say those things are also driving in their cars. So they're actually going through even faster than folks who are walking and biking. I feel like I tend to observe more cyclists and pedestrians when I am walking or biking myself because I'm not zipping through quite as fast. So thank you for bringing that up. And I also appreciate you raising the sort of cart before the horse, which is we also need to make improvements in order to actually make it safe to walk and bike before those counts come up. So Director Hinton.
Would you mind taking this consent calendar in two separate, because I'm going to be abstaining on the minutes from last meeting as Councilmember Vice as well. Did it.
Absolutely happy to do that. Any other questions or comments? All right. I would seek a motion, and if we could take them separately, that would be great.
So moved.
So are you making a motion for 4-1 or 4-2 through
Let's do 4-2 through 4-5.
5? Okay, perfect. All right. Do you have a second? Great. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And then a motion for 4-1.
So moved.
Second.
You guys are the dream team here. All right. All in favor? Aye. And abstention from Director Hinton.
Director Cater Thompson, and second for both. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, and
thank
also an
you.
abstention from Director Ford. So 2 abstentions on 4-1 for the record. All right. And that takes us back to our regular calendar. So we will go ahead and move to the committee appointments. Tanya, do you have a presentation, or do you want me to just kind of share what we've heard, or?
I don't have a presentation, so if you'd like to take it from here, that'd be great.
Great. So we did solicit requests for, for participating in the various committees, and we will handle them separately. So we want to sort of handle the executive committee first, because that is something that is voted on by the full board, making it sort of a Brown Act committee. And then separately, we can have a conversation about anyone who wants to serve on ad hocs, which I will then appoint, which is not a board action, but can just be announced out at this meeting. So what we heard from the executive committee would be myself, Melanie, and then Janice and David expressed interest. That does give us one more seat for an alternate if there is anyone else who would like to serve as an alternate on the executive committee. I kind of getting a sense that most people are committed out based on the responses that we got. Director Hinton.
I would be interested in serving as an alternate.
Wonderful. Okay. So, so it sounds like we maybe have consensus if someone wanted to move that, and, or wait, we got to go public comment on this item. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on our committee appointments?
None online.
Seeing none.
No members of the public here.
All
So
right.
no public comment.
Great. So moved. Okay. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. So again, just for the record, that would be me, Melanie, Janice, and David, and then Nisa as the alternate. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? No. Okay. So that will then take us on to the ad hoc committees. So starting off with transit, the folks who expressed interest were Chris, David, and Melanie. We actually have a couple more spaces if anyone is interested. I also know that you all get a lot of emails, and it's possible that folks just missed the email. Thought that it might be good to have some other city representation. Janice, are you?
Consider.
You'll consider it?
What's the dates?
To be determined around your schedule at your
Oh,
convenience. Okay.
Okay.
Did I sell it well enough? Okay. All right.
For me.
We'll bring cookies.
Oh.
Great. All right. Going once. And so we actually do have an opportunity for someone else to serve because I believe we can have five, up to five on this. Anyone else want
Happy to
to?
serve.
Gerard. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay. So that is it then. We will have Chris, David, Melanie, Gerard, and Janice. We don't even need to move. We actually don't want to move. The attorney doesn't want us to make a motion. I just am announcing based on our discussion. So, next up, I do actually want to appoint an ad hoc committee, just around this regional revenue generation measure, that we discussed with James earlier. And so this will be a very short-term, very focused ad hoc that is really going to be around advocacy. So really it's going to be sort of, the job to work with the lobbyist team to coordinate with Executive Director Cameron and to make phone calls to legislators as appropriate, possibly booking some meetings with staff or that kind of thing. And we discussed at sort of a chair and vice chair meeting, myself and Melanie serving on this. And then I also asked David if he would serve as an MTC ABAG rep, and as someone who has a keen interest in state government, thought that maybe Chris, might be willing to serve as well. That still leaves us with another seat. If anyone else would like to, okay, I was hoping that was you're the other one. I felt like I needed to leave one seat open. Okay, so Sandra, so we have five there. So we will go ahead and make that the Regional Transportation Measure Enabling Legislation Committee. And so that will just be sort of, checking in and trying to respond, because my understanding is that they are literally finalizing the draft of the bill as we speak, and it's due out to be released on Monday. So, very time sensitive on that. And then we also have the ongoing work of our climate committee. And so we heard from Gerard, who was interested in serving on that. And then I was wondering if Ariel, if you might be willing to consider continuing on that committee. If not, and you've got too much on your plate, totally understand. But we would love to have more members than just myself and Gerard, because we'd eat well, but we'd be lonely. So, all right, great, wonderful. Would anyone else like to serve on the climate committee? And this will really be about, obviously we tried to move forward with a revenue measure. The polling wasn't great, but we are, planning on sort of licking our wounds and coming back stronger and really working with our regional partners to identify what's being done, where are gaps, and where are funding opportunities. So anybody else? And we can always add in the future. But we'll start with that power trio. Is that okay? All right, we've got to think about it. So let's add her to the sort of, you can drop off later if you need to. Does that sound good? Any other thinking about it? Okay.
First alternate.
All right. There you go. I recognize that you all serve on so many things, and I'm really, really grateful for your service and for your willingness. So, so that concludes our ad hoc committees. And then I also wanted to make an announcement, which is, this hasn't even come to the board previously, but there is an organization called CalCog, and previously Chris has served on that as the chair. And so we were kind of thinking that we'll just sort of keep with the chair serving that role. So 2 years and 2 years, and then rotating through. And so basically you attend a couple of meetings in Sacramento, and there's a conference, and you go and you sort of, represent SCTA's interest based on the legislative platform that we've adopted, and, taking any direction from the board. So just wanted to announce that publicly, since that hadn't been something that I think had public awareness previously. All right. Any other questions or comments on that, or anyone want to form a new committee and get more signups? No, I didn't think so. So with that, we are going to go ahead and jump forward to 5.3, which is programming. And I believe that we are going to hear from our Director of Projects and Programming, David. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. David Ripper, Director of Projects and Programming with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority, Regional Climate Protection Authority. The item before you is a augmentation to the SCTA Funding Program Cycle 1, which you approved last February. In this case, we're asking for programming for one project, the Smart Windsor Extension, Windsor High School Undercrossing project. In the future, we will be coming back to you in April with our remainder of programming for this action. But for this item today, we're only talking about $2.8 million for this one project. As the board is aware, last summer, we discussed a funding swap between the State Transportation Improvement Program and the Measure M Highway 101 program to free up $9 million in funds for local projects. In addition, we had $20 million from the Regional Measure 3 North Bay Transit Access Improvements Program for transit projects. We have a list of draft funding recommendations we've developed for this $29 million total that will be coming to you in April for final action. But in this case, we had a very time-sensitive project for Smart's Windsor extension. They are planning to construct a box culvert underneath the rail right of way to provide access from Windsor High School to the areas on the east side of the tracks, and to construct the ADA accessible ramps to connect that box culvert so that bicyclists and pedestrians get to the school. SMART needs an additional 2.8 million to construct that undercrossing and make it accessible to the public and provide safe access for students to get to the school. If that funding is not available, SMART will not be able to move forward with a change order with their contractor, and that work would have to be done at a later date and will be much more expensive, much more disruptive to the public. So this time we're asking for your approval of 2.8 million for the SMART Windsor extension, Windsor High School undercrossing project, and we'll be coming back to you in April with the remainder of the funding recommendations. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to acknowledge our Windsor rep. Mike, is there anything that you want to say about this project?
Thanks for having me. And normally it'd be Rosa here, but I'm filling in for her. No, this is really important for Windsor. We have a lot of kids. I don't know, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I apologize, but we have a lot of kids who cross these tracks every day. And if we don't have this safe crossing, one, there's gonna be issues with SMART, but two, it's gonna put more people in cars. So I think this it really feeds into what our big priorities are in Windsor. Foundational things we talk about all the time, safety and pedestrian friendly lifestyles.
Right.
So I would really recommend that if it's possible, we continue forward with this. It's important for us.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Melanie.
I just want to say, David, great catch and great teamwork, and way to save us all a lot of money by using common sense construction principles and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much to staff for catching this and flagging it and taking action on this. So I too am just really looking forward to seeing SMART at Windsor, and I think it's really going to benefit the kids, the community, and what we're going to see in Windsor is basically, Windsor is really one of the first town in Sonoma County that use transit-oriented development principles in their downtown development. And I think that we're going to be shocked at the synergistic benefits of having that train to downtown Windsor. And this was a very important piece of that puzzle. So thanks for your work on that, David.
And thanks to Mike for a very inspiring, you can't possibly vote no on this after hearing that. So I will now open it up to any members of the public, or do you want, Janice, did you want to jump in? Okay. Okay, great. All right, any members of the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing none in person and seeing no hands raised online, take it away.
Make the motion.
All right.
Yes, sure.
Oh, okay, I was like, all right. I'm kind of glancing over there. All right, we got Director Kelly on the second, I think.
Thank
So
you.
all in favor? Aye. And any opposed or abstentions? Carries unanimously with Chris Rogers just absent for a moment, but we might be able to add his vote when he comes back. Is that a thing? Can we do that? Looking back at council anyways. I don't know if he wants to just be on record for this one, but I know he supports it. All right, so moving on, we are now going to shift into RCPA mode and have our local government liaison presentation from Anna. Is it Anna or Anna? I want to make sure I get it right.
It's
Anna, okay, great.
all right.
Good afternoon, Chair Hopkins and members of the board. My name is Anna Oliva, and I'm the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN, Local Government Liaison. Today, I'm happy to provide you with the briefing of the BayREN Liaison role and the services it entails. Great. So I'll begin with a brief overview of BayREN as an organization and an introduction into the BayREN Liaison scope of work, followed by key findings from informational interviews conducted with jurisdiction staff. And I'll conclude with some upcoming outreach and education activities. Ready to put this somewhere?
Just advance the, you're good. Anyway.
Oh. Great, okay. So BayREN is a coalition of the 9 Bay Area counties led by the Association of Bay Area Governments and is funded by utility ratepayer funds through the California Public Utilities Commission. Since 2013, BayREN has been dedicated to delivering targeted, integrated, and regional scale climate solutions focused on energy, water, and greenhouse gas reduction. The Regional Climate Protection Authority is the county's lead for BayREN's programs. The County of Sonoma's Climate Action and Resiliency Division, or CARD, is contracted by RCPA to manage BayREN implementation and outreach, as well as provide technical expertise for the programs. BayREN is committed to working closely with local governments to promote energy efficiency and resiliency in our communities and operates based on 3 core principles: promoting healthy, energy-efficient buildings, building capacity for local governments, and reducing carbon emissions. BayREN has identified an opportunity to enhance local government access to BayREN programs and services. This is the primary reason for the introduction of the new BayREN Local Government Liaison Service, which is specifically designed to ensure that city and county staff can take full advantage of BayREN's extensive efficiency and clean energy services to benefit their residents and municipalities. Through this initiative, we aim to bridge the gap between local governments and BayREN programs. Our goal is to streamline communication, provide tailored support, and ensure that every jurisdiction can effectively leverage resources available to them. RCPA is piloting this new role in Sonoma County and will use lessons learned to help inform the replication of this role in other BayREN counties. As of September 2023, the BayREN liaison role was added to the SCTA RCPA team, enhancing support for the BayREN programs and contributing to the realization of RCPA's climate mobilization strategies and objectives. Liaison service provides 3 key areas of support for staff. First, communication services. The liaison will work with jurisdictions to provide ready-to-share BayREN content for existing local government communication channels. This includes appropriate content and links for local government websites, social media, and newsletters, as well as information on workshops, case studies, and training opportunities. Additionally, the liaison will ensure that staff are aware of any programmatic changes that occur. Next, climate policy support. The liaison will work with jurisdiction staff to analyze local policy and identify opportunities to use BayREN services and metrics to support local energy and climate goals. Looking forward into 2024, we're anticipating the launch of the BayREN Data Aggregation and Reporting Tool, or DART. DART will serve as a digital dashboard designed to showcase and share BayREN program metrics, including rebates and program participation at the local level. This tool can be leveraged both by the liaison and jurisdictions to access and utilize crucial data for informed decision-making and strategic planning. More information on this tool will be available later this spring. And finally, equity policy support. The liaison will work with city and county staff to understand local equity goals and guide BayREN program activity to support those goals, as well as coordinating with regional partners to inform staff of developments in equity best practices and strategies to inform effective BayREN outreach and education in each jurisdiction. Informational interviews were conducted with staff in the 4th quarter of 2024. To introduce staff to the liaison service, identify opportunities to build staff capacity, and determine best practices for distributing information throughout the community. There was a significant opportunity not only to expand staff capacity through the liaison role, but to also bolster the partnership between BayREN and jurisdictions. Staff expressed support for the new role and emphasized the importance of including jurisdictions in outreach and education efforts, providing an opportunity to share information, key findings, and data. It's crucial to involve city staff in the conversation without expecting them to shoulder the full responsibility of organizing events or becoming subject matter experts for BayREN. Additionally, staff shared that they face various barriers such as restricted capacity, familiarity with the BayREN program offerings, difficulty in managing and updating communication materials, and the complexity of informing stakeholders about program eligibility and resource navigation in a highly saturated and evolving rebate and incentive landscape. Staff also shared that financial constraints for residents and businesses pose additional challenges along obstacles of engaging contractors. However, staff identified chambers of commerce, climate action committees, council subcommittees, community-based organizations, and city and community events as opportunities to collaborate on outreach and education. Working in partnership with city staff is key for leveraging community knowledge and perspective to shape BayREN outreach and education in a way that best serves residents and expands access to home efficiency, weatherization upgrades, and education. Now I'll discuss some of the specific activities undertaken as part of the BayREN local government liaison role. In the fourth quarter of 2023, we were focused on laying the groundwork for the liaison service. This included, as I mentioned, informational interviews with staff, conducting policy analysis, and creating detailed jurisdiction profiles. These activities were essential in understanding the initial needs and challenges each jurisdiction faces. Moving forward into the first quarter of 2024, we saw the full launch of the service. During this period, our activities included providing communication services, offering policy and climate support, ensuring the liaison service can be integrated into the operations of each jurisdiction. Additionally, focus groups with jurisdiction staff were held to gather feedback on new BayREN initiatives, such as the Single Family Home Plus program redesign, promoting workshop and webinar resources, and continued to communicate and build relationships with jurisdiction staff. As we move forward into the second and third quarter of 2024, our focus remains on proactive engagement and collaboration. This includes providing informational presentations to city councils and subcommittees and continued facilitation of educational workshops and webinars. We continue to strengthen our partnership with the CARD team to expand BayREN outreach and education efforts, ensuring that our programs and services reach a wider audience and have a greater impact on residents of our local communities. Additionally, I'm excited to announce 4 new BayREN programs will be added to the existing BayREN portfolio. The new programs will continue to be developed and rolled out throughout 2024. And it's crucial that staff members are well informed about these upcoming initiatives, recognizing the importance of their involvement and understanding and their success. I do want to highlight that a future presentation to the board is planned that will provide a more comprehensive introduction to the 4 new programs, as well as a reintroduction to the revised Single Family Home Plus program. In conclusion, the Bay Area Local Government Liaison plays a critical role in enhancing collaboration and communication between local governments and BayREN programs, ultimately contributing to a more sustainable, resilient future in our county. Thank you for your time and attention, and I welcome any questions or further discussion.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions from my colleague? Yeah.
So Sebastopol is one of the first to roll it out. I'm just curious when you.
Oh, there you go. When you will be touring around to the cities, because we would definitely like to get on your list. I have 3 new council members that probably aren't that familiar with the program. And so if I could get your name or you can get mine and we can make sure to submit to agenda review.
That would be great. Yeah.
Thank you.
×2.
Yeah. We will be meeting with Rohnert Park and Santa Rosa's Climate Action Subcommittee in April, but I'll work with Sebastopol. And I've been in touch with their CAC. They are very active and engaged. Yeah.
Yes, we know.
Yeah.
We know firsthand.
Yeah.
I'm married to one of them. That's what the reference was.
Go team.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would ask if any members of the public wish to comment on this item. Seeing no one in person, do we have a hand online? Wonderful. It's daylight savings time. I just blame that for anything that happens today.
Hi, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, Anna, for that, and also that great presentation. Speaking today in my capacity as a representative of the City of Sonoma's Climate Action Commission, we have been, as you may know, we recently passed our climate action strategy at the city level and have begun exploring how to implement that strategy. And so this this BayREN liaison work is very timely for what we're trying to do in the city of Sonoma. One of the things, though, that has come up in our review of the BayREN tools that are on the website right now, and this may be incorrect, so that's why I'm asking, is it appears that there's no information for customers who are exploring solar photovoltaic opportunities in their properties. And so the question is that something that BayREN is going to be adding, or what do you recommend as a liaison for dovetailing solar solutions alongside of the traditional package of BayREN opportunities? And then the second follow-up question is that since Single Family Homes Plus is being redesigned, if you could go into a little specific detail on how that redesign, what features of that program are likely to change, and then maybe some high level forecast of what the 4 new programs would be. All of those things would be very helpful to us at the jurisdiction level. Thank you for your consideration of my comments.
Yeah, we will actually be meeting with Jennifer Gates, hopefully in the end of March, to discuss future collaboration opportunities, as well as provide her a briefing on the programs, as she's new to transitioning into a bit of the sustainability role following Travis leaving. As for solar is not currently covered by BayREN, but what I would suggest is connecting with the Climate Action and Resiliency Division. They offer a handful of services and are a close partner for us, but extremely knowledgeable. And luckily, 2 of them are right here today, if you have any further questions. As for single family, just at a really high level, we will be shifting towards weatherization incentives, as well as remediation, and hopefully offering a comprehensive concierge service for residents. So more information will be available on that shortly. It's still being developed. And then again, at a very high level, because we are still waiting on a little more information before we share, but the 4 new programs are integrated energy services and targeted decarbonization services, which are both public sector programs, climate careers, which is workforce focused, and the BayREN refrigerant replacement program, also known as BRR, which will be serving the commercial sector.
Good name.
Appropriately
named. David, you got a question?
I have a question as much as I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for your work. I think I was president of ABAG when BayREN was birthed. So I'm really happy that it's taken off the way it has, and really another service of ABAG in terms of trying to find the niche that the local jurisdictions need in order to advance causes. And this actually was akin to what we do with Sonoma County Energy and Independence. So kind of fell on the tails of that in terms of first water conservation, which was timely, but then broadening that now and opening it up, which I think is a great way to go. So look forward to those 4 programs coming on board as well and continuing to come down this path. But I think it's a great service. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone here knew that that was part of what came out of your dues when you do pay for your ABAG membership.
Thank you for flagging that. And thank you, Tom, for bringing up the photovoltaics. And we will have that as our very next agenda item and opportunity, I think, to hear from Card about that. And I would also flag that there's an increasing amount of interest, certainly in my neck of the woods, in also having a battery backup system, in light of the frequent de-energizations that we are seeing. One question that I had was just, you mentioned commercial refrigerants, and I happen to know that we have an ice house out in Bodega Bay that provides all of the ice for our local fishermen who are currently using a refrigerant that is no longer being produced, and I think will be banned in 2030. So is that the kind of thing, that you are looking at as sort of commercial refrigerants that are dated and trying to come up with solutions for that? Is that a connection that I could make to regional parks out there?
I'm not sure we have enough information to support that yet, but I can follow up with more information in the future. But I do know we're focusing primarily on like a corner store, restaurants and grocery stores, just at a very high level, but.
This is like a grocery store on the water, but it only does, salmon and crabs. I'm going to keep hitting this, but anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Oh, one more online? Okay.
Barbara Lee, we've allowed you to talk. You may begin and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, members of the RCPA board. My name is Barbara Lee and I am, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm the Climate Action and Resiliency Division Director in the County Administrator's Office at the County of Sonoma. This is just a brief comment in response to the question from your board chair, Linda Hopkins. The last couple of go-rounds, the CARD staff has recommended a congressional appropriations request that would provide funding to do refrigerant upgrades and other upgrades at the ice house in Bodega Bay. We have not been successful in getting any of our congressional representatives to pick that one up. We're looking at putting it in again this year, provided it's selected from the group of requests that are under consideration now from the county. We also have evaluated the ice house as part of the comprehensive energy upgrades that we're looking at for the county, and your board will be receiving recommendations from our staff and the contractors that have been working on that in collaboration with Sonoma County Public Infrastructure. And that item, I believe, is coming to your board in mid-May.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Our staff, our team has actually been working on submitting that as an appropriation request for Huffman, and we actually took him on a tour a couple weeks ago of the facility. So he is aware of the request and actively working on it. But I am very curious, because that's always an if, if there might be space potentially in the BayREN program. So if you could let us know as information becomes available, that would be fantastic. Wonderful. Any other questions or comments, Melanie?
I'm sorry, Anna, I have a pie in the sky question. It kind of relates to one of the items on our legislative list, which is current legislation from Skinner SB 233. I think I see, some future in the future, some crossover, and it's regarding bi-directional charging. And when we're talking about fire safety, when we're talking about battery backups, I don't think it's too soon to start talking about making sure that that's also kind of part of in the future considerations of BayREN, because that's exactly what my constituents are saying. Oh, well, I'm honestly thinking about it too, is that, I got solar and battery and solar last year. We're looking to add battery, and there were just more and more conversations about, well, gee, maybe I'll just wait 2 or 3 years and I'll use my new car down the road will take advantage of bi-directional charging. And I can see, BayREN having a part of that conversation. So I would hope that you'd also be part of maybe forming the language in that legislation, because I know it's something that that my constituents are considering. Maybe I don't want a power wall or backup. Maybe I just want to be able to use my car. And I think it's going to be an important part of the work that Sonoma Clean Power does, and around smoothing the duck curve, which is also something that I'd love to see BayREN be part of the conversation around, because that's, again, it's that consumer level and behavioral change at the household and small business level that ultimately is going to make a huge impact. So those are just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for the great presentation and all the work you're doing.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. It was an excellent and really informative presentation, and appreciate all of your work. So with that, I'm going to move on to item 5.5, and I believe that BC will be introducing our special guests this evening. Make it sound like a game show,
Great. Good afternoon, Chair Hopkins and members of the board. My name is BC Capps, Climate Program Manager with RCPA. And I'm here today to introduce a discussion about the path to residential building electrification, featuring our colleagues and partners from the county's Climate Action and Resiliency Division that's been referenced here a couple of times. Before introducing our presenters, I'd like to remind the board of our briefing from last December on RCPA's proposed countywide Equitable Building Electrification Action Plan. This forthcoming document is being developed to implement the objectives of our Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy, specifically the all-electric building campaign and our goal to reach climate neutrality in Sonoma County. A number of questions were raised by the board members as part of that discussion in December, and we hope to begin answering some of those here today. The rest of the questions will be addressed in detail as part of the final report that's expected later in the year. In general, there are some issues that are fully within our control locally, but a large number of issues that require regional or statewide coordination to address. One of the key areas where we can begin to make immediate progress is working with local residential property owners to assist them in making voluntary energy efficiency and resilience upgrades to their homes. RCPA is the Sonoma County lead for implementing programs through the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN, as you just heard from Anna. Our key partner in this work is the county's Climate Action and Resiliency Division, and I'd like to introduce Doria Estrella and Christine Condon to speak with you today about their numerous educational and technical resources that are available for Sonoma County residents who are looking to consider electrification of their existing homes. So with that, Christine, I'll have you up and please take it away.
Thanks, BC, and good afternoon, board. My name's Christine Condon. I'm an energy and sustainability analyst with the County of Sonoma in the Climate Action and Resiliency Division. I've been with the county since 2017. There we go. Why electrification? Decarbonization or electrification refers to the process of replacing technologies that use fossil fuels with those that use electricity as a source of energy. Improving our buildings and changing our main energy sources to clean, renewable energy will not only reduce greenhouse gases, but will also make homes more energy efficient, more resilient, healthier, and safer. All electric homes are healthier because indoor and outdoor air quality is improved with the elimination of on-site sources of pollution attributed to gas stoves and gas appliances. All electric homes are safer because there's no danger of gas explosion or gas leaks, no poisonous combustion gases like carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide, and fire hazards are greatly reduced. More energy efficient. Electric heat pumps, the high efficiency solution for space conditioning and water heating, are at least 3 times more efficient than gas furnaces and water heaters. Because heat pumps move heat rather than creating it, the same system also provides high efficiency air conditioning. A great quote that I heard from an HVAC contractor is that every heat pump he installs comes with a free air conditioner. Electric induction stoves are twice as efficient as gas stoves because they only heat the bottom of the pan directly using magnets, not flames to heat the food. They require a fraction of the cooking time and they're safer. All electric homes reduce greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change. The impact is even greater when paired with on-site solar electric systems and/or the utility's 100% renewable mix, like Sonoma Clean Power's Evergreen product. And all electric homes are more resilient. Many Sonoma County residents lack air conditioning, especially low-income households and renters. Replacing gas or propane furnaces with heat pumps provides high-efficiency heating along with the most efficient cooling system available, offering a great resiliency benefit during extreme heat and wildfire smoke events. And while electric appliances are vulnerable to power outages, most modern gas appliances like gas tankless water heaters and furnaces require electricity to operate. In fact, gas appliances are more vulnerable to outages since they're dependent on 2 infrastructure systems. Next slide, should I? While there are many benefits to home electrification, there are also many challenges when we consider electrifying systems in existing buildings. So it's critical to start making a whole house plan. This way, projects can be phased to accommodate budget limitations, optimize available incentives, and focus on energy efficiency first. Energy efficiency or energy saved is the primary step to electrification. It has been proven time and time again that energy efficiency is the lowest cost option of any clean energy strategy. It's the most equitable because it is the least expensive, most effective way to reduce a household's energy use and energy cost burden. Reducing the home's energy load also contributes to grid resilience. To achieve beneficial electrification, it's important to think of a house as a system. Changes in one building system impact the performance of the entire home. For example, maybe a homeowner wants to install a high-efficiency HVAC system. Well, that system can't operate to its maximum efficiency if they haven't addressed insulation and air sealing first. The heat pump system will have to work harder to keep the home comfortable, will likely need to be larger to meet the loads, and cost more to operate. The path to making a plan for electrification starts with a whole house assessment. Resources available to assess a home's energy use range from no-cost online tools and the do-it-yourself toolkit available at the library to home energy score assessments that can cost up to a few $100s to more comprehensive whole house energy audits that include building performance testing. After assessing energy use, the first step is to address what we like to call low-hanging fruit, such as air sealing and insulation. Air sealing, or reducing the amount of air that leaks in and out of a home, is an extremely cost-effective way to cut heating and cooling costs, increase comfort, and create a healthier indoor environment. When upgrading insulation, attic insulation is the first priority and offers the greatest energy savings potential, with generally the lowest installation complexity and cost. Next, wall insulation, and then floor insulation. Only after optimizing the building envelope, the next step is to work with a contractor to select properly sized high-efficiency equipment. After performing heating and cooling load calculations to properly size the HVAC system for the improved building, the contractor may be able to reduce the size of the system to decrease upfront capital costs. With a well-insulated building envelope and well-designed mechanical systems, a home will be more affordable to operate. On-site solar PV and battery storage systems, including bidirectional charging infrastructure as it comes on board, are a great way to go further to decarbonize and offset all-electric homes' energy use, reducing monthly utility costs and increasing resilience. And after reducing loads with the previous steps, a smaller system may be sufficient to meet the home's needs. Energy management and conservation are key to reducing operating costs, enhancing grid stability, and potentially avoiding costly electrical service panel upgrades. Educating renters and homeowners about the importance of avoiding using electricity during peak between 4 and 9 p.m. and ensuring that they switch to an electrification-friendly utility rate are essential. And a heat pump water heater can be programmed to act as a thermal battery. By pre-charging the water tank during off-peak hours and using the stored thermal energy during peak, the same strategy can be used with heat pump HVAC systems. And working with a knowledgeable contractor to optimize the existing electrical service panel can help avoid costly service panel upgrades. For example, new load sharing devices can be used to allow for circuit sharing between devices like an electric dryer and an electric vehicle charger that require a larger circuit, but can easily be managed to operate at different times. Now I'll pass the presentation to Dory to talk about our organization's efforts in educating Sonoma County residents to connect them with resources and to make a plan.
Thank you, Chris. I think I'm ready to go. Good afternoon. I'm Dory Estrella, an analyst with the Climate Action and Resiliency Division, and I've been working on education, outreach, and implementation of energy programs with the division since 2010. As Chris mentioned, energy efficiency is the building blocks to electrification, and it was long ago that we started educating homeowners on its importance. Over the last few years, the efforts have evolved and expanded to not only align with the county's climate action and resiliency goal of educating homeowners on decarbonization and resiliency, but also to help residents navigate the several programs that have become available to support a market transformation. Our goal is to provide Sonoma County residents with the information needed to make an informed decision. How do we do this? In 2022, we introduced the Home Resilience Guide, a tool to educate homeowners on the improvements that can be made for a more energy efficient, safe, comfortable, and resilient home. Since the introduction, we have built out a comprehensive outreach plan that includes in-person workshops, marketing materials, and quarterly webinar series with a variety of topics that are shown here on the slide. The workshops and webinars have shown to be very popular with over 3,900 participants to date. I'm going to ad lib a little here. We do have one. We're in the middle of a workshop series now, a quarterly workshop series. Next week's is about solar storage and electrification. So I know we had that comment a little earlier. You can contact our office for more information on how to get registered. Recordings of the webinars are available to registered participants following the webinar and posted in our video library for on-demand viewing for all. We also participate in numerous community events throughout the year and partner with community-based organizations to share information. Another major point of outreach is contractor training. Through partnerships with organizations such as BayREN, PG&E, and others, we work together to ensure that we are making efforts to have a highly trained workforce. From incentives and rebates to alternative and affordable financing options, there are several programs that have come online, some that have ended, and even more coming in the future. It is important that we work collaboratively across programs instead of competitively. It's great to see so many programs being introduced, but how does the average homeowner know what is out there? How do they know when it's the best time to make their improvements? One of the biggest questions that we get every day is about the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA incentives. And while the tax credits became available for work that was done in 2023 and beyond, we are still waiting implementation of the highly anticipated rebates, which at the last communication from the California Energy Commission is looking like the end of 2024 and into 2025 for program rollout. We continue to follow it very closely. Again, we see the significance of the path to electrification. By having a project plan over time, homeowners can maximize incentives based on what is available now and what they might be eligible for in the near future. For most, electrification is designed to be done over time. A great example is the IRA tax credits that were designed to reset each year, supporting a long-term approach. Up-to-date program information is made readily available through all of the methods of outreach that I discussed on the previous slide. In addition, the Climate Action Resiliency Division offers better building consultations to all Sonoma County residents to connect them with resources specific to their projects and assistance creating a project outline over time. A market transformation does not come without challenges, but within these challenges and through collaborative effort, several opportunities to drive change present themselves. Organizations on every level are working to create creative solutions to address issues such as tenant-landlord improvements, grid resilience, improving older homes, and making it all affordable and accessible. Overall, addressing the challenges and opportunities in home electrification requires a multifaceted approach involving technological innovation, infrastructure development, and community engagement. By embracing cleaner and more sustainable energy solutions, we can not only mitigate the impacts of climate change, but we also create healthier, more resilient communities. And with that, I will pass the presentation back to BC to talk a little bit about our housing stock and share some final thoughts.
Great. Thanks for that information, Dory. And to get a handle on the scale of the work that's involved, that's needed countywide, I'd like to share some recent census data on the county's residential building stock. As you can see in the top box, there are approximately 206,000 residential units countywide, and these are broken out across single-family, multifamily, mobile homes as the three major areas. As we look at some of the stats in the lower boxes, you'll see that nearly 75% of these units, or about 154,000, are single-family homes, with each house needing an individualized electrification plan. Second, over 50% of these homes of these units countywide, about 56,000, were built prior to 1980, which indicates that they most probably need key energy efficiency improvements to lower their overall energy needs before installing new all-electric equipment. And finally, nearly 65% or about 69,000 of these units use natural gas for heating and will be good candidates for conversion to electric heat pump as these furnaces burn out and need to be replaced over the upcoming years. This information will be greatly expanded in the next few months through an upcoming report that's being conducted by BayREN that is looking at an existing building study throughout the entire 9-county Bay Area, and will then be pulling Sonoma County stats from that report to really help guide our continued efforts. To wrap up, I'd like to wrap up on a slightly hopeful but a cautious note. Overall, electrification of the entire Sonoma County building stock is going to be a major undertaking with many unknowns, and it will take many years. Numerous educational and financial resources are available now for property owners who wish to begin the process of electrifying their homes, as you've heard from our presenters here today. Additionally, coordination among partners at the federal, state, regional, and local levels is going to be needed to find creative solution to many of the known challenges that Dory was pointing out on her last slide. And our work here at RCPA is focused on the forthcoming Electrification Action Plan, which will aim to provide a countywide roadmap for jurisdictions, residents, and property owners to electrify their existing buildings over the upcoming years. As you can see, we have no small task at hand. With that, that includes our joint presentation, and the three of us are all here to answer any questions about the resources presented or anything else to support can support your this quest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Director Ford.
Thanks for the presentation, and very happy to see the program getting getting going stronger. My question is about all the guide and all the slides address only single family homes, and I wonder about, is that your sole effort on the part of the BayREN outreach? I realize that's about 75% of the buildings or of the homes, but it seems to me, especially the multifamily that are in homeowners associations, are potentially pretty big bang for the buck. It takes, 3 inspired homeowners to take over an HOA board and change 100 homes, potentially all in one fell swoop. But the landscape's incredibly complicated for those folks. They're treated as, some of the accounts are treated as commercial by PG&E, for instance. Some of them are treated as residential, and it's impossible to figure out which rebates and tax credits are available to accounts in homeowners associations. You get different answers if you call different offices. It's a real maze for those people to try to figure out. So I'm wondering if you're working on programs for multifamily.
Sure, I can. Sure, I'll just start really quickly. I think for the RCPA report that we're working on for our building action plan, will actually be focused on the full spectrum of buildings, all structures throughout the entire county. So it'll be looking at residential, commercial, and public buildings. We really kind of chose to focus in on residential to single family residential today because it's the easiest slice to take. It's a small bit, and that's really been the focus of the home resilience guide that the county's office put together. So with that, let me pass it to you with a little bit more info.
So from the CAR point of view, we actually are working through BayREN. We have a pilot program that we're going to be expanding out and doing some personalized outreach to multifamily property owners on electrification. This is a coordinated effort along with Sonoma Clean Power, who's provided funding, additional incentives for going all electric. And we will be providing the education and outreach to those multifamily property owners, really targeting looking at breaking up that multifamily sector into a different number of units so we can really dig in and figure out the data and introduce ourselves to those property owners and take a personalized approach, which is going to be presented to all of the BayREN territories moving forward on our successes and our feedback.
Great, just one quick follow-up. I appreciate that, and I think that the distinction between rental properties with a single owner who sort of has control and can make decisions versus properties that are condo in HOA is a big distinction that will involve totally different strategies.
Great.
Noted.
Other questions? Director Corsi?
Thanks to Christine and Dory and BC for keeping this subject on the table. I've talked a little bit about this before, and I just think that it's really important that we focus on an equitable decarbonization strategy. These projects are not inexpensive, and you know, they're often seen as optional, maybe even a luxury type of item. So has there been any discussion about subsidizing, say, multifamily projects, and also coordinating the consolidation of some of these projects? You mentioned microgrids, but also shared battery storage, those type of things. Are there ideas or discussions around those opportunities?
I can start with one piece that I know about. Several of the programs we are watching that are basically IRA, Federal Inflation Reduction Act funding, which will be passed from the federal government down to the state and then implemented statewide. And numerous of those programs are either specifically for low-income or disadvantaged households or communities, or have a large set aside as part of a larger pool of funds. So that's something that I know that specifically looking at those fundings are all coming through the California Energy Commission. Specifically thinking about the Equitable Buildings Direct Install Program is one that's going to be coming online the next year that will be specifically focused on that. So that's the area that I have been specifically watching. And I don't know if there's other, do you have anything on kind of the sharing of resources?
Well, in addition to those, we're also working in partnership and reaching out to places like Burbank Housing. So looking at those and finding out their needs. I've worked with them recently on kind of evaluating some of their, I think 22 of their properties. There's a few that are going through the BayREN program right now to do their upgrades and do electrification measures. So
nice. That's great. BC on the Energy Commission and Inflation Reduction Act. Do you know, are those probably not individual grants, but how do those go from the feds to the state to actual projects?
The money will be transferred, as I understand, the money will be transferred from the federal government to the state. The Energy Commission will be running those programs. I believe then those will be administered. I'm not sure if they'll be fully administered at the state level or be passed out to the region wide and say for the Bay Area, potentially implemented through BayREN. And then I believe the funding would be available potentially on a project by project on a single household coming forward and saying, we'd like to do this. We'd like to make these improvements and we need additional help. And that's something that we will certainly be following. There are draft guidelines for some of those programs that are just coming online and for evaluation right now. But nothing that I know that's actually been set in stone yet. So
Okay. There are savings to be had with these kind of projects. I just got through my first winter with heat pump system on my HVAC and water heater. My electricity bills are up because it uses more electricity, but my gas bills are down to close to zero in some months. The key, I think, is being able to generate your own power, which I haven't been able to do yet because of my HOA. And also to be able to, especially in areas that lose their power a lot, is to be able to store that electricity. Anyway, it's the great direction we're going there. It'll take a while, I think. Thanks.
All right. Other comments or questions? Director Bagby?
I just want to thank Christina, Dory, and BC for all their work on this. And I have one of these at home because my husband attended the Cloverdale Library. And it's I'm so glad Director Corsi, asked the question about how is the federal money going to be distributed, because we've kind of been trying to, attend these workshops, attend them in person, attend them in Zoom. And the answer is always like, oh, we're hoping to have that at the beginning of 2024. Oh, we're hoping to have that at the beginning or the spring of 2024. And here we are. It doesn't look like spring anymore today, but here we are. And we're just like, now there are finally some guidelines. So, I mean, I just would, urge BC, if you could just get that information out as soon as we possibly can. But I also just want to call to our attention that, the Climate Action and Resiliency Division is and your partners at Sonoma Clean Power and your partners at BayREN, you're taking on this. I'm sorry to say it this way, but figuring out how the benefits and the subsidies stack up, it just is so hard. I mean, it is bewildering, even if you kind of talk policy on a daily basis. For kind of your average renter or your average homeowner, this is the biggest challenge. And so I'd really commend you for taking this on. But I would also urge you, I probably don't need to tell PC this because I'm preaching to the choir, is that as we figure this out and you're helping people access these funds, tell us and identify and tell us the barriers to adoption. And then let's get those back up bring it to the attention of the policymakers so that we can say, this is what isn't working. And this is where we need to fine tune this, or maybe this is where we need to develop a local program because, this over here, there's too much of a gap, those sorts of things. So we need to, as we're doing this, that kind of really positive feedback loop. Well, I think we're kind of building the airplane as we're flying, but the feedback loop is going to be so important because that's where you get people falling off the bandwagon who maybe were really, gung-ho about going electric or installing solar. If they throw their hands up because there's so many barriers to adoption, then that's where we need to come back and figure out where they dropped off and get them back into, renew that interest and get them back into the planning and then the implementation phase. So please, as part of this, let's hear back about, what's not working, what the failures are, what the barriers to adoption are, and then bring them back to us at our various boards so that we can start addressing them. And I know you'll do that, PC. So I know I am preaching to the choir there, but I just want to thank Dory and Christina. You guys have never been on the videos. They do such a wonderful job. And thank you so much for the outreach you have done. And I just, I think you're approaching this in a really positive way. But that you're addressing the hardest nut to crack, which is explain to people how they can stack the benefits and get their project finished. So thanks so much for your presentation and your hard work.
Director Kelly?
Thank you. I think, really happy to see the progress on this and some of the conversations that we've been having locally in the city of Healdsburg, especially with respect to the majority of our single family homeowners who are all 65 and older and feeling like a lot of these programs are too complicated or out of reach or, I think the conversation around HOAs and some of the neighborhoods in our city that were built in a specific era where a lot of those homes are all, pre-1975 construction, where there's probably some low-hanging fruit where a lot of those appliances are outdated and coming up for the need to be replaced and using economies of scale in some of those neighborhoods, almost like a direct install program that you would use for multifamily, but to partner with the HOAs and especially in our senior living communities, our 55 and older communities, to come in and do a presentation to those homeowners. Vast majority of those neighborhoods are all homeowners, to talk to them about what are the opportunities, and then the city could also partner with you on helping those seniors who we hear from quite a bit that that they're struggling to afford some of these upgrades, but obviously the energy costs are also going up quite a bit for them. And so energy efficiency, I think, will be a net benefit if they can overcome the hurdle of the cost prohibitive nature of getting upgrading these appliances. And so I know BayREN was doing some on-bill savings programs where you would purchase a new appliance and then you pay for it over the course of time on your utility bill. I don't think they were using that program for like large scale appliances. They were mostly doing it for like water upgrades. But I think there could be opportunities there, you know, to kind of leverage some of those things where if someone can't afford that big upfront cost, even with the stack of subsidy, that maybe the cities or municipalities could partner in some way to help with that one-time upfront cost, and then you pay for it over time over the course of your, you know, your monthly bill. But I do see this is such a great opportunity, and I just don't want us, for a generation of folks, to feel like they're being left behind with it.
Great feedback. Director Cater Thompson?
Is this available
Yeah, how do we get more of these?
online? Yeah.
They are. It's available on our website as a digital download. And then also, and we have extras here if you wanted some for your jurisdictions.
Great. And just following up on Director Bagby's remarks about sort of circling back to the policymakers, I wanted to ask a question, which is to what extent is CARD and RCPA engaged in the Bay Area Air Quality Management Air District's implementation working group for the zero NOx rules? Has there been any engagement?
I have been for RCPA. We are not active. We do not sit on that board at all, but I've been actively listening to all of the meetings and following that kind of implementation plan. And I think that's part of the impetus on our end of making sure that we kind of have the resources in place for local residents when those rules do kick in the next few years. So it's something that we are closely watching. Even though we're kind of on the sidelines at this point, are kind of very interested observers.
Okay, because I feel like, I mean, I think that the only representative from Sonoma County might be Sonoma Clean Power at the working group level. But there are it's basically sort of a technical advisory committee, right? That's kind of meeting to discuss the implementation. And I mean, everything that you all just described are exactly the answers that the Air District needs. And for instance, we've already in our preliminary review realized that there is, I don't honestly remember if it's a water heater or space heater, but a particular heater that is installed in some apartments that there is literally no electric replacement for currently that meets the size specification. So that's something where we're like, well, obviously can't mandate that change because there is no actual replacement to that. And so trying to sort of suss that out. And then we're also really keenly interested in the equity concerns, you know, folks in older homes that might need a whole home electrical upgrade in order to actually electrify. And it's not just as simple as installing the item. It's, you need a whole new panel. You need to, you know, have conversations with PG&E, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we know PG&E is not the fastest entity at responding to requests for those kinds of services. So anyway, just wanted to flag that as, if you're not invited to those meetings, I would love to make sure that you have an invitation to those meetings, because I think that everything that was just described is absolutely critical information for the Air District. And I don't know, Dory, has CARD been invited to that, or?
We have not been invited to that, although we follow it very closely. In fact, I've done a lot of work with local supply houses and the manufacturers on the low NOx requirement and where the industry is going, so that we can help, again, provide the most useful information to our constituents here in Sonoma County.
Okay, well, I will follow up and try to do sort of an email introduction and make sure that you're at least aware of those meetings, because that is ongoing. And it's, I feel like this is a wealth of information that the Air District should have at its disposal.
Great, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for such an informative presentation and conversation. Do we have any members of the public in person who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none. True. Seeing none online. And this was, I think, just a presentation, or was there an action that we had? Just a report. Okay, wonderful. So we can move on to item 5.6. Thank you so much for being here, which is our Caltrans State Highway Operations and Protection Program, SHOPP.
Thank you, Chair and Directors. Dave Rippert again. So the items on the 2024 Caltrans State Highway Operations and Protection Program, or SHOPP. The SHOPP is the Caltrans program for maintaining the state highway system throughout the state. And it's updated on a 2-year cycle, with the draft coming out internally and developed summer and fall of odd numbered years, and the final document being approved in the spring of even years. So this is the 2024 cycle, and it's for the 4-year period of fiscal year 24-25 through 27-28. The draft SHOPP was released publicly in December and is due to be adopted by the California Transportation Commission next week. It includes $21.2 billion in investments in the state highway system statewide, and of that, $241 million is in Sonoma County for existing and new projects. As I mentioned, this is a rolling 2-year update of a 4-year program. And so every 2 years, new projects get added in as projects move to construction and new projects are moving forward. We have been coordinating with Caltrans regularly on the SHOPP, and this last year we have implemented quarterly meetings, and we also are involving ourselves with Caltrans on specific projects, and also working with Caltrans to partner with combining SHOPP funds with local funds. For example, on the Highway 116-121 roundabout project, a recent project that opened bids last week in Guerneville for ADA improvements and sidewalk improvements. And we're also partnering with Caltrans to try to partner the investments the board has approved on Highway 121 and Main Street East with some safety improvements that Caltrans is doing on Highway 121 between the Sonoma Creek Bridge and Napa Road near Sonoma. I wanted to call board's attention to a number of things we've been working on with Caltrans, and these include safety working groups. One that was recently implemented last year was for Highway 12 and Verano Avenue, north of the city of Sonoma in the Springs, where a number of incidents have occurred over the last few years involving pedestrians, both on and off the state highway system. There have been a number of collisions where there have been either fatalities or serious injuries. And so last spring, we worked with Caltrans to form an ad hoc working group of Caltrans, SCTA, County of Sonoma, and City of Sonoma staff to address the issues in that corridor. And that very quickly, we were able to implement some safety improvements near the intersection of Highway 12 and Verano Avenue. And Caltrans is moving forward with what they call a reactive safety project, doing longer term improvements in the next 3 years at that intersection. More recently, back in November, we worked with Caltrans to get the safety working group that had started before the pandemic for the Highway 116 Lakeville Highway corridor going again. That was in response to a collision that occurred south of Highway 116 in the intersection of Stagecoach Road, which is actually in the county's jurisdiction of Lakeville Highway. But we wanted to get that group going again. It was very successful prior to the pandemic, and that safety working group that was organized by CHP ultimately led to recent safety improvements on Highway 116 to install rumble strips between Paredes Road and Stagecoach Road. And they're also moving forward with the roundabout that is planned for construction in 2025 at Stagecoach Road and Lakeville Highway. Tragically, we were having our first meeting of this reconstituted safety working group on January 31st. And on February 1st, there was a fatal accident at the intersection of Pineview Way and Highway 116. Immediately, SCTA staff and City of Petaluma staff worked with Caltrans to have additional meetings of our safety working group, and that resulted in some immediate improvements by the City of Petaluma to install barrier rails preventing right turns from Pineview Way and the McDowell Boulevard extension onto Highway 116. And Caltrans is working on modifying the rumble strip project to address the striping changes associated with that. Caltrans is working with the city and SCTA to move forward on more shorter term improvements at Pineview Way to include a permanent traffic signal roundabout. We worked with Caltrans and the city to see if there's a way to do things faster, and the best solution we came up with was a reactive safety project, which instead of a normal 5 to 7 year timeline for Caltrans to deliver a project, takes them 3 to 4 years. And that we felt that was the best way to deliver the project quickly for the public. At the same time, we were working with Caltrans and the city on a potential corridor study for Lakeville Highway that was part of the Safe Streets for All grants that the board was notified that we received from the U.S. Department of Transportation back in December. And also Caltrans has a capitalized maintenance project in the SHOPP to do bike lanes and sidewalks on Highway 116 between 101 and Stagecoach Road. So all these corridor efforts are being examined through this safety working group we have for Lakeville Highway, and it's been a very good partnership, and we hope to be able to replicate that in other areas of the county where there's really kind of lots of things happening on the state highway system where not necessarily the locals can get involved because there's a big barrier to deal with Caltrans, and we want to be sure that we address safety issues and mobility issues for the public. I should note that we have Gez Tazazu, our Caltrans Regional Project Manager, online, I believe, on Zoom, available to answer any questions that you may have. But this time, our recommendation to you is to examine the proposed projects included in the SHOPP and let us know if there's any other priorities that you would like us to push for the upcoming 2026 SHOPP in a couple years. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you. Opening it up to my colleagues for any suggestion, additions or amendments. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment on the Pineview. The city and the citizens of Petaluma absolutely support you and thank you for the changes. But even with the barriers that were there, there's a picture of a car, and this has happened more than once, in the lane that turns right onto Pineview, going there to take a left. And so these projects are really important. Because even if you do a temporary, people are just not following the rules. So I just thank everybody for that.
Thank you. Director Lowe?
Yes, thank you for the work and the proposed work in the Sonoma Valley, and obviously some needs there. I saw people out there working on the Donald Gap already. It's coned off, and it's a very important little stretch that needs to be maintained. The question I have is that during the recent rains and consistently 121 floods, you know, and it puts a lot of stress on some of the other roads into Sonoma. Is there any talk about any improvements to that corridor that could lessen the impact on the other roads and maybe prevent some of, I mean, we just had a whole thing about climate, but we know that, you know, tides are rising, but anything to talk about that? Because it happens every single year for weeks.
Just to address your comment on the recurring flooding on Highway 121, we're aware that this happens just even during normal storm events between Sonoma Creek and 8th Street East. And it's really an issue that has to deal with the tidal flows with Sonoma Creek and not having enough capacity. I believe Sonoma Water is doing a study of Sonoma Creek to see if there's any improvements that can be made, but any additional improvements to Highway 121 would be very expensive to deal with the recurring flooding issues that are there, and something we're very cognizant of and we'll be looking at further as the Highway 121 8th Street East project moves forward.
No, it's just that we're going to put a roundabout they're just going to have to keep going around and back up the other way.
It's a boat roundabout. You're just going to have little kayaks and canoes.
You know, those little boats at the kids' fair, right? They just go around in a circle. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Director Hinton. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, from Sebastopol, a couple things. Got to say, we're so frustrated with the parklet policy that Caltrans, we basically have had to remove our parklet that we invested a ton of money in on Caltrans right away due to your rules that require insurance and permitting and all those things. And unfortunately, the merchants that surround that parklet, while they wanted it, they couldn't give our city any support to keep it. And our city is got some financial issues that we're fighting right now. So I have to really be vocal about that. I think that policy you guys came up with makes it very difficult for cities like ours to have parklets and keep them, and our citizens don't really understand it. Number two, I did hear that you moved the crosswalk that's in front of the movie theater that was always going to be mid-block to that corner. And that was never the original plan. We were going to do it mid, if you're following me, between Scream and Mimi's and the theater, because we had a hotel that was planned to go there and it was perfectly situated. And I understand that you're moving that now. Not sure why, because we still have an issue at Scream and Mimi's. People are still going to cross the street there and they're not going to walk the whole other way to the whole other side of the block. So that makes no sense to me anyway, having grown up there and eating ice cream at Scream and Mimi's and going to the movie theater. So I want to just be really vocal about that. I'm wondering if there's any room to relook at that and move it back to mid-block. Then I had another thought, but would love to have a roundabout down by Langerman's Gym, like need something there, roundabout where that Bodega Bay traffic would make so much sense. And we still don't have a roundabout in our city. And so I have to put in a plug for that.
I do just want to jump to David's defense, which is that he doesn't make the rules. He works for us and tries to advocate for us with Caltrans. But I think that those are really important messages to carry back to Caltrans. And, you know, outside of the SHOPP program, it would be great to just sort of get like a general update on kind of all Caltrans impacted projects, because there are some things that sort of they're not undertaking, but which there are easements for, like actually the crosswalk in proposed crosswalk in Sebastopol on 116 is one that comes to mind. And then you were referring to a different one. I was thinking the one north of town. There's also the one that you were talking about. So it might be good just even to get like a quick update. for any, projects that are involving Caltrans right of way on what the status of those projects are, would be, I think, really helpful. But it sounds like, yeah, definitely some frustration on kind of the lack of responsiveness. And I will actually second the parklet issue because we also, well, I'll be candid. I don't think that the businesses in Guerneville actually ever officially got permission. I think they just set it up and then Caltrans kind of made the county tell them that that was illegal. But we kind of tend to, just go our own way out in unincorporated West County. But it would be great to, have an update and a conversation with Caltrans about parklet policy, because I think that was something that was really lovely. It was so wonderful to see people sitting and, eating ice cream and enjoying that space. And it only took up a couple spots. And so it was, my kids actually noticed, they're like, where did that go? That was so fun. So yeah, we tried. So maybe a response on the parklet. Oh, and here looks like we do have someone that you can, so your comments were heard and elevated. You went straight up to escalated, There
Thank you,
go.
thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce myself because I didn't meet most of you, except Linda Hopkins, Chair Linda Hopkins. I think I met you at the Gleason ribbon cutting event. I'm a project manager for that project. And then hopefully at the ribbon cutting, I will have opportunity to see most of you, like Melanie, Chris. And I think I met David Rabbit before in a meeting. So just to mention your answer, we have been working closely with David and the CTA. I like early engagement even during bid phase. That's why for SHOPP 2024, our first meeting was in June, even 4 months before the first version was released. I provided an opportunity to comment on bids to some of the cities, but it was kind of a little bit late. But going forward, definitely during PAT phase, I will be working closely with you, especially City of Sebastopol. There are projects coming up. There is ADA curb ramp coming. Environmental phase will start in July. And then there may be a couple of projects coming up in City of Sebastopol. So definitely going forward, we'll engage with our project managers. I have fantastic 4 project managers working for me and 2 assistant project managers. So feel free to contact me. I know SCTA, they usually communicate with me starting early from bid development phase. So your notes is well taken and I'm looking forward to work with all of you.
Great. I would just say, could we maybe set up like an in-person meeting in Sebastopol and then also check in on like the Guerneville project that people don't even believe is going to happen because they've been hearing about it for so long. I keep telling them that yes, construction will start on the Guerneville ADA project, but it would be really, really wonderful, I think, to have an in-person meeting just to check in on the status of those projects, and don't need to take up board meeting time for that, but would also say it would be great to have it in other parts of the county if there are other questions or concerns.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no problem. I'm looking forward to meet with you in person. So anybody who wants to meet regarding SHOPP project, and we are closely working with the county too. For example, there is one campaign project coming through City of Sebastopol. Annie from the county, she has seen the bid, she has commented. I provided her to look at all alternatives. She picked the most expensive and best alternative for your city. So it's not like we ignore, we communicate very well with the city and the county for all your projects. Like Guerneville project, there are complaints from business owners that they don't want project in summer. Riverside community, I met with them online. And then we put a provision in the plan that no business will be impacted during summer season as much as possible. Even though the contractors are a little bit complaining, bid opened, we are going to pick the lowest contractor, but we are trying our best not to impact business in the city of Guerneville, especially during summer. So we hear all of you, and then I'm going to continue to meet you in person if you like. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So maybe David, you could help sort of put us in contact and see if we can go ahead and set up it sounds like maybe a couple of meetings, at least West County and East County, maybe North, maybe Cloverdale. I don't know, are interested. So good work begets more good work. Thank you for that. Yeah, sure. Director Bagby.
Sorry, I am so sorry. I hate to pile on. David and our partners at Caltrans, but just kind of in my, capacity of being on the smart board and being part of, meetings and listening to residents of Geyserville, just south of Cloverdale. The issue about the jurisdictional issues, whether sidewalks are concerned, it exists in Geyserville as well. And I think it might go back to the fact that that road dates back to stagecoach times and probably even farther. And so I'm very heartened to hear that there is an interest to communicate with the residents, and there definitely, is a need to communicate with the folks in Geyserville. Probably the best contact there is going to be, and since they're not here, I'm going to throw them under the bus. Johannes Hoberts and of course Supervisor Gore. There have been issues over the year where people who own stores were actually prohibited from putting racks and things like right outside their door because Caltrans said, well, gee whiz, that's our jurisdiction. You're going to have to put your goods back in the store, and you can't put, a bench out. You can't put seats out, things like that, which just are, counter to common sense. So just having a better dialogue, better communication and relationships with those regional representatives, I'm heartened to hear that those are possibly improving.
Yeah. I would just say, for Caltrans, it's a state highway. For us, it's our small town downtowns.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's sometimes hard to sort of, wrap our minds around. Like we see it very differently. We see it as a sort of common, important commercial space. And so would love to work with you to continue to, bridge those divides and work with local business owners and communities. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
One more question for you. Sorry, don't disappear yet. Director Keeter Thompson. I don't know.
He's still
on. He just went dark.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm still here.
Sorry.
No problem.
Possibly off topic, but when the Washington exit was done for Petaluma for the Washington off-ramp, and there is a sound wall that is dividing a neighborhood and the exit. On the inside of the sound wall, there's a tiny area that's a pocket park, or that should be a pocket park, and the neighbors want to know how they can create a park in this tiny, tiny area. Who would I contact to move that forward?
Director Karasan, if I may, we have been having some conversation with that topic for those two parcels on Arlington, I believe, or Stewart, yes. With the city manager, we will need to have those conversations again with Caltrans right away to see if those parcels can be disposed, since they're still part of the active state right of way, but we're happy to follow up on that more. If I could circle back real quick to the overall comments, we're happy to set meetings with Caltrans, specifically for West County and Sonoma Valley, perhaps, and any other areas they're interested. And Gez and his team are fantastic to work with. He gives us a monthly update that we include in your project and programming activities report on status of all Caltrans projects, and includes a nice map of the future projects they're working on. But we're happy to continue those conversations further and help assist the county and all the local jurisdictions and working closer with Caltrans. And I believe we do have a public commenter online, Drew.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? All right. And any member of the public wish to comment in person? Any members of the public present in person anymore? Okay, Drew, over to you. Great.
Tom Conlon. Oops. Wait, give me 1 second.
Thank you, Tom, for listening.
Alrighty, Tom, I permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity. Tom Conlon here in Sonoma Valley, and I guess, and the rest of the Caltrans team, I just want to thank you so much for the letter that's in your packet, the response to the SCTA's concerns in this area about the SHOPP, and also in particular, the innovations, the improvements that have been made in the Sonoma Valley Highway 12 corridor that are listed on that letter. The phase 1 improvements are they're a wonderful step in the right direction after the fatalities that we've had in that area around Verano Avenue at Highway 12, as well as the Donald Gap. So I appreciate the effort that's going into this from Caltrans, and I just want you to know we look forward to this as a model for the rest of the county. As you can hear, there's a need for it all over the county. So thanks again for your efforts.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom. No other members of the public wishing to speak, Chair Hopkins.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I actually also wanted to say, well, thank you, Tom, for thanking Caltrans, but I actually really appreciated the response and was absolutely thrilled to see 116 from Guerneville to Sebastopol, which I have been asking about for 7 years. And it's possible that construction could start in 2029. So we're looking at 16 years. That's about right for government, right? That's pretty fast. Anyways, thank you very much for your responsiveness, and I look forward to setting up those meetings. This is an action item. So would anyone like to make a motion or anyone have any final comments?
I'll move the
Second.
item though.
Awesome. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? All right, that motion carries. And now I'm actually going to ask, in the interest of time, because I know that some of our council members need to get to their council meetings, that we are going to take public comment for all of the reports and announcements now. So that is items 6.1 through 6.4. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment in person on these items? Any members of the public who wish to comment online on any of these reports or announcements? Okay, then I'm hoping that we can do sort of a lightning round on the reports or announcements. So anything from the executive, we actually skipped executive committee report because we didn't have an executive committee. We will have one next time. Regional agency reports, any regional agency reports?
I can.
Okay,
Well,
you want to
report
go on
on
the,
GGB,
sure, go for it.
Work on the suicide deterrent net will be complete by the end of the year. It's been a long process. Excited about that. The process for setting bridge toll fares for the next 5 years has begun. The district has a $220 million shortfall after the one-time COVID funding runs out, and we're planning on balancing that $130 million through toll increases and the other balance of it by efficiencies, et cetera. Let's see what else. Work on the seismic retrofit is beginning, and we've picked a vendor to manage the construction phase of it. And so we're moving forward. Bridge traffic remains down, as you know. So in the just to be brief, there's 150,000 less people commuting into San Francisco on a daily basis, and we're adding service as traffic warrants it. So yeah.
Great. Any other regional agency reports? Very briefly, Bay Area Air Quality Management District, we did reach a landmark settlement deal with the oil refineries who sued us over our attempt to regulate them, which actually means that A, they will still have to meet the clean air standards that we passed, and B, they will be actually spending millions of dollars in mitigation fees into the directly impacted communities. So it was actually a pretty big win for the air district and for those communities of concern that are immediately adjacent to the refineries. Moving on, we had the advisory committee agendas, which were just an FYI, and then we've got Ross up for the marketing and communications activities lightning round.
Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. I'm going to keep this very brief and just mention one item, which is we have groundbreaking on Friday. That is for the Hearn Avenue overcrossing. So thank you all for being involved in that. And I did send out the invitation. If you have any questions, feel free to email me directly. The one thing I will say, there is literally no parking on site. So we are going to be running shuttles from the Southwest Community Park. The details on the invitation, but we really can't park at the DMV. So that's the item, but it's going to be great. We hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Director Rogers.
We're so excited.
That's awesome. And
But
thank you.
20 years on making.
Right, exactly. And thank you also, Melanie, for representing as the vice chair. Appreciate it because I couldn't make it. Next up, we've got Tanya, climate change activities.
All right, I'll just stand up quickly because I've been sitting for a while. I'll highlight 2 items in our report and welcome any questions from the board. The first is that we are making great progress on the online climate dashboard. I've seen a kind of a preview of it. It's looking really fabulous. We are taking it out to staff members in your jurisdictions to get feedback, to make sure that it really reflects what they'd like to see in the dashboard, and plan to bring it to you for review probably in the May timeframe or at your May board meeting. And then the other item I wanted to mention is that we've been working with BayREN on a climate pollution reduction grant application to that funding program. And it's going to be a pilot program that actually is going to be applied in all 9 counties, but it will be a targeted pilot electrification energy efficiency pilot looking at specific neighborhoods in each of the counties. So RCPA's role, if this grant is awarded from the EPA, would be to identify neighborhoods in Sonoma County to do targeted outreach and deliver the BayREN program. So really excited to be part of that. And that's what I wanted to highlight.
How will you select those communities? What's the process going to be?
That will be to be determined.
Okay.
There'll be requirements around low income and disadvantaged communities,
Okay.
but we'll definitely work with all of you on that if the grant is awarded.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tanya. Next up, Dana with planning activities.
Good afternoon, directors. I'll just highlight a few items from the planning activities report. First of all, the vehicle miles traveled mitigation bank and exchange program request for proposals has gone out, and proposals are due on April 12th. Once we select a consultant, we'll begin work on that project. So that'll be later this spring. Secondly, there's been a lot of activity on the countywide active transportation plan. Over the last couple of weeks, we met with all of the 7 jurisdictions that are doing local plan updates under the countywide plan to review draft project lists and criteria for prioritization as well as policies. We next Monday, we have our second in a series of 3 focus groups. This one will be focused on people living with disabilities. And lastly, we kind of April through June will be our next round of public engagement. And so we will be bringing those draft plans out to the public at a series of pop-up events and workshops throughout the county. Thirdly, the priority conservation area grant is out, and we will be working to get the word out to our jurisdictions and discussing the program with them. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions on that one? Thank you for the report. And now moving on to Shauna for our projects and programming activities report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things that I wanted to give you a quick update on. First, SCTA has been working with Caltrans on the Highway 12 closures. Yes, you are all likely aware there have been a number of closures along Highway 12 in the city of Santa Rosa. There is one coming up that will be pretty impactful, full closures for the weekend of March 22nd through 25th. We are working with Caltrans, and we will, once they make the official announcement on that, we will make sure that we post it to all our socials and share it with all of you. So just wanted to let you know that that was up and coming. And I believe that also overlaps with the closure that's happening with SMART. So just FYI, it's going to be a little hectic that weekend getting around town. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was that SCTA is working on a feasibility study for the intersection of Fulton and Highway 12, and we are hosting a pop-up information gathering session at the Mitote Food Park on Tuesday at 6 p.m. That is tomorrow at 6 p.m. And it will follow, I believe that the Taco Tuesday event will end at the park, and that it's sort of coordinated. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions if there are any questions about what's in them.
That's great. Any questions? Director Rogers?
I just want to give a few quick explanation of what the SMART closure is also, so we talked about that at all.
I know that there are updates happening, and the closure will be happening at Petaluma. So they will be operating service between Petaluma and Larkspur, but the closure is happening for construction of the North Petaluma station. They have to close the tracks in order to move. They're putting in new tracks for I can't remember what it's called, but they're adding additional tracks for a trunk so that trains can pass each other. And so they have to close the tracks for that purpose. And so it's just for that weekend.
Great. All right.
Another weekend later on.
Yes. Thank you, but I don't have that one. It's not immediate. It's not immediate.
It's not during baseball.
For a Dallas fan, yes, it is.
Sorry. Below the belt. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate it. Any announcements from my colleagues, or just that the Cowboys suck? Because that's our only announcement. All right. On that note, okay, meeting adjourned.